Today's episode comes to you thanks to our sponsor, Kangen Water. Electrolyte-reduced water is the power of true hydration, manifested in the most advanced Japanese technology that has been in the market for more than 50 years. To drink the best water, shower with a hot spring quality water, and start a new business with the most amazing and profitable compensation plan in the world, visit thelivingwatercouple.com to learn more or get started today.
Welcome to a brand new experience with innovative voices from all over the world. I would like to invite you all to something that is magical, something that is powerful, and something that is from my heart. This is the Devon Taylor Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Devon Taylor Podcast. I'm very excited for our next guest today. He is a coach that specializes in helping men find their value in life. He has also helped me. We've only had one session together, and because of that session, I felt so changed, and honestly, I just felt seen. So I really wanted to introduce Abdinzar. Sorry, I know I probably butchered that, but I'd like to introduce you to the show and just thank you for coming. So, yeah,
Correct.
welcome.
It's all right. It's Obsidian, just like the rock. Thanks for having me. I'm glad that you have this platform, and I'm glad that you reached out to invite me on here because it works really well with my human design being a projector. So the invitation was very well received.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you said yes, and I knew that before reaching out to you, whatever it was, I sat with it first and created a message that felt more, I guess, just catered to even what you were saying, your human design. So I'm glad that happened just naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But just for anyone that doesn't know you, I would really like for you just to kind of explain what you feel your mission here on Earth is and what your background is, and just for our listeners to kind of get to know you before we get into the interview.
Oh yeah, the funny thing about it is I don't have a mission. I love that question because I knew exactly how I was going to answer it. I don't have a mission at all. I have what's called an open G center in human design. So because of that, my sense of self and how I'm viewed is gonna change throughout my entire life. I may actually never really find out like exactly who I am. And I've just recently, with the coaching sessions that I have with my coach, recently made a lot of peace with that. And it feels so good to drop that weight of being in a world where you're kind of programmed and influenced to know what you're doing all the time. Is it making sense? Do other people approve? Do you approve? And it's not easy to love yourself and just do all these things when there's so much more seemingly important things out there to be concerned and worry about, and how they influence you and how you feel about yourself. So when it comes to my mission is whoever's in front of me.
Mm-hmm. I love that. How did you get into the field of coaching? Like, what was the catalyst for you to say, this is what I'm going to be doing, or this is what I'm going to tap into?
Just also, again, when it goes to human design, coaching is like a natural thing for a projector, a very, very natural thing. Projectors are 20% of the population, in a sense, give or take. And we are not here to do the work by ourselves. If any work is to be done at all. If we are to do work, it is supposed to be technically in union with other people. And to some degree, we're conditioned by other people's other centers, their motor centers. And with that, when it comes to coaching, we don't need much to go on when it comes in to that sense. So we don't need to be conditioned by somebody or motivated by somebody to do that. When it comes to coaching, it goes well beyond just the word coaching. We sense, we feel, we dig deep into what an unhomogenized truth is for the individual, the person, and we work better one-on-one. So, being a projector, waiting for the invitation, we work better one-on-one. And we're here to guide generators and manifesting generators on where and how to distribute their energy properly. We're seers, we're guides, we're wisdom trolls, we're Gandalfs. We are waiting at the gate, the mountain, the bridge for that interaction that has us receiving what we so much desire, which is recognition. It feels good to have recognition, but what you soon to find out is that a lot of your projector experience, you're going to be without it, and it's not because you're not trying, it's because you're trying too hard. So that's kind of why coaching is like very keen for me, very like easy for me to do. I've been giving advice all of my life, in a sense, in one way or the other, and I really took it seriously maybe about 3-4 years ago. I had my first real actual client. It was a male client, and I take that one seriously because that one was like an absolute stranger rather than by somebody who's in the coaching field already. That's kind of like a first, like, yeah, this is like a real person who was listening to me talk to another person, and there's a whole story behind that. But yeah, and then I just took off from there. But it hasn't been back to back because not every invitation is correct for me. Also, the work that it would take to put my voice out there and like shout it from the rooftops, I'm a coach, come sign up, blah 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 blah. It's not in my. I don't have a passion for that. If I'm with someone that sees that in me and wants that, then I'm on fire because I can be conditioned by them. So that's kind of like the one aspect of the coaching part that I don't really subscribe to. Not because I think it's bad. I just don't see myself in getting into it just yet, getting all gung-ho about that. The marketing part. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And even as you were speaking, I think the way that we were working together, just it manifested in the way that it did. And I'm super grateful for it. And honestly, didn't know you before that either. So that was my introduction to you and just your insight. So I'm grateful to have had that experience. And I'm sure anyone that works with you is as well. But
No,
I like that.
Actually, they're not. There are some
Really?
people that, yeah, there's some people that, I'm glad you said that because I do want to speak on that.
Yeah, please.
Everyone should know this, and coaches should know this. You're not going to have good times. You're not going to have good resolutions with everyone.
No.
And it's a real big ego death. People need to understand, if you're going to become a coach, check yourself. Understand why. What are you doing it for? For me, it was kind of it took over. So at first it was, this would be aligned for me, this would be the right thing for me to do. And then the kind of purposeness of it took over. And what I mean by purpose is, because of our external environment, how it's all running and programmed, I started my inherent desire to guide, right? was bombarded and taken over by the outside influence of, oh, I got to make this work. So it's this switch, right? It's this switch from where I'm linking with this one person on a consult call. We're linking up. We're like, oh yeah, like, man, we should, I'm giving them little tidbits and I'm like, this is what I think, and this is all while I wasn't following my design, by the way. So I'm giving them little tidbits in here and there. And then we have our first session, and then all this like pressure, I put on myself, and it's a normal thing to have pressure. That's not a bad thing, but it's all this like, oh, it has to work now. And once that happened, then this very personal aspect of it started driving in, meaning this person's success is my success. We got to be successful. That's your sign. If you have any indication that a person is trying to get you, a coach is trying to get you somewhere other than back to yourself, it is the wrong coach. Take your money, run away. I'm serious. You're wasting your time. Because a coach is outside of the box, and they're supposed to be. They're not supposed to be inside of the box. They're supposed to be outside of the box, bring you outside of the box and say, what do you think? Not say, this is the outside of the box. It's better. You should be out here. Hell, what's going on inside there? That's directing. That's not coaching. You understand? Coaching is having another set of eyes, viewing the same sky, and dropping in questions and insight that can open doors to multiple doors, roads that lead to other roads, for that person to feel free and within their own space to choose what they want. Actually, with a coach, you should feel more free in your life, right, rather than constricted. The same as you should in a healthy relationship. In a healthy relationship, you should feel enabled more to be who you already were. Now, when it comes to communicating with that person, there can be restrictions, compromises, and things that you can do, and win-wins, because that you're communicating, you're relating. But when you're doing whatever the hell you want to do, as long as it's not hurting another person and you're not hurting yourself, that should feel free. That's how a healthy coaching relationship should be. I want to stay away from the word ego because people love to run on that word, but yeah, in a way devoid of ego. And I think it's a big deal. At the time, that got switched over for me. I wasn't following my design. So at the time, I wasn't hurting my client. It's just I was having a hard time. It didn't feel fluid for me. I was, this and that, and trying to figure out like how to do rather than feel through it. So I had a client, he didn't want to finish the last session, and I had to, sit with that and understand and all this other stuff, and fully paid me, but just didn't want to finish the last session. I understand now completely. And I had another woman who she didn't finish her last session either, fully paid, and just was like, no, I'm done. I think I, got everything I needed. And then sent me a message like, well, I really didn't like the way you said this, and I didn't say that. Those are what I call after the fact people. And I would say that to their face, but it's not. Now that I look back on it, they weren't invited. It wasn't an invitation. They wanted a fix. They wanted something that I was trying to mold myself into being, and I totally got that now. And I'm better now that I look back on it. I'm better for those exchanges. But my main point out of saying all of that is, coaches and people that use coaches should understand that it's not like that. It's not some relationship where you're going to, get your answers and get your results, and they're gonna. It's a very, touch and go, very tricky surgical process. It very much can be. And it depends. You can have some coaches that, they just want to be your wet nurse by the side of your bed, and just take your pulse, but they promise a surgery. And there's some people that do the surgery, and some people that do the surgery, they get off on how deep they take you, and they actually don't plan on like your treatment after or during. They're more concerned with how surgical can we get, how real and raw. What's the point? Where are we going? What is the kick here? So you're showing me that I think I'm a piece of shit, and I know that I already think that. That's nothing new, and trying to fix that right away is not going to happen in 5 sessions. That's a lifetime. That's something to work on. So you got to be careful of all that stuff. And that's my biggest warning, is just know that it's not always, even with the best intentions, going to work out where every single session is peaches and roses and unicorns.
I love that you said that, because that just speaks to how in your integrity you are. And I really do want to speak to the you were talking about your human design. I want to get to that, but I kind of want to go back a little bit to what you were saying. You were speaking to relationships and how you should feel free in your relationship, and not a lot of people feel that way. What can you just explain, like, your thought process behind that? Like, why should a relationship be freeing versus like restraining, which I feel most people think a relationship is? What's your thoughts?
Aside from those that grew up on land, number one, where they're free to run around, like, physically, and also amazing parents that instilled a lot of questions and always made sure that their kids had options in life, in everything. Those 2 fundamental properties, unless you have that, you grew up feeling controlled, restricted in some way. And there's varying degrees of that. So all the way from when you're young, growing up, to when you get into a relationship, it's your parents and your upbringing is the only way you know the world. So anything that you come across, any person you engage with, your RAS and other parts of your pattern recognition system is going to be trying to figure out, is this less like dad or more like dad? Is this less like mom, more like mom? Remember, these are the people you're around the most. This is exposure. That's why humans are adaptable, right? So the more time a human spends in an environment, the more, as long as it stays alive, the more adaptable it becomes. Or it will, its body, its whole system will attempt to adapt. Same thing. So as this is going on, when it comes to relationships, you're doing the same thing. More like dad, less like dad. More like mom, less like mom. Sure, you can have a mental check system, like, there's more than mom and dad. There's different people, and I can't tell, and la 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 la. But that's how you think. That's not how you feel. And what you feel is being registered in your body faster than you can put words together, and it will always be that way, hands down. So I just want to say that I hope this reaches everybody, because I just want to say this across the board. Anyone, any person walking this earth or coach that says we have to change your mindset because that'll change how you feel is worth, I don't know, what's the lowest worth thing on the planet? What's in most abundance right now is worth like seawater. Like, it's like bottled seawater. Like, that's how much they're worth, because it's absolute garbage. It's absolute trash. Everyone needs to understand that your feelings and your emotions, the synapses, the connectivity in your body, the connectivity in your system is faster than your ability to think of a word to say. So how would you dare ever convince yourself or anybody that it's your fucking mindset and your self-talk that's going to fucking, yeah, right. You can CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, NLP. There's some level of, that stuff, feeling, emotion. There's some level to that. You're tapping yourself, whatever. But boy, that's a long road. and convincing yourself that you had one tapping session and you no longer hate your mother. Right. So when it gets up to relationships and feeling free, the best way to kind of like paint that picture and describe that is it's someone who has a vested interest in you being you. And what I mean is, when we're in relationships, it's a game, it's a show, it's a dance.
Mm.
We put our best foot forward, kind of, for what? You know what I mean? It's like, hey, you're a gamer, you still live with your mom. Why don't you bring your pizza rolls to the dinner date because you like to snack before you eat like an actual dinner? She might like pizza rolls too. She give it a shot. But we don't do that. We don't eat pizza rolls. We don't game. We show up in a nice shirt. We pull out chairs and, fold napkins over laps when we don't use a napkin at home. Right? So these are things that you need to bring to the table to create this environment that I'm talking about, right? This freedom situation. Because you got to give it a chance. You have to like give it a chance to come naturally. And I think that's the biggest issue, is nobody gives it a chance to come naturally. So when it comes to creating that sense of freedom, we have to understand that everybody's has a self-interest. You come into a relationship, you're going to work with somebody, you're going to be in partnership with somebody, sure, fine, whatever, that's cute and shit. At the same time, you are looking out for yourself, and you should, and so should your partner. Your partner should help you look out for yourself, pure point blank, and vice versa. The problem is when we start to think that if our partner does this or looks out for themselves or doing that, it's going to affect me. The communication about that effect is one of the most important things. That's why nonviolent communication is 101. You start there. So that you can kind of see your own foolishness in your face when you recite using nonviolent communication. So to say, for example, next I'll get into dependencies, but I'm going to be in this heavy death metal band, whatever the hell, right? And the partner is like that's a self-interest. So that partner is not asking their partner to be in the band with them. That partner is saying, I'm going to be in the band. So I'm going to be away from the house. I'm going to take time to do this. Maybe we'll use the garage. So there's multiple things that'll influence that person, right? So how would we set up a sense of freedom in that? So if it was a fantasy scenario, the partner would say, oh my gosh, that's so great. I don't know anything about heavy metal, but I know how it makes you feel when I see you talking about it or doing it, and you light up, and it lights me up, and I love that. And that's, God, when you're in that energy, it feeds me. Like, it's so awesome to see you like in that energy. You're so happy when you talk about it. I may not show up to the show, but sweetie, like, I'm with you. I love you. I think that's amazing. I don't like the music, but I still want to hear everything about it. Like, tell me about the people in the band and the music that you play. I don't understand any of it. That's aversion. That's like adding water to the soil for that other person's dreams, aspirations, whatever, to grow. Right? Most of the time is the person is thinking, and let's say for this example, this fantasy example, that person is doing heavy metal, and this person is a devout Christian that doesn't believe in that kind of music, right? I probably shouldn't bring religion into this, but let's just go there. So that person does that, and then that person is conflicted on how that's going to affect them. So then they're saying, well, how long are you going to be away from the house? When are these band sessions going to take place? You can't do that in the garage, or you can't do that over here, and all this other stuff. So that's not the real way to work things out. There's workable situations to that, but that person's not being workable, and it's creating an environment where, well, I mean, it's pretty much standard relationships. I should just say that. It's not actually creating an environment at all. The scenario of creating freedom is creating an environment, but everybody's like clashing with their self-interest. You know what I mean? And also is what doesn't create freedom is undue pressure onto expectations that people have. So there's a huge component to showing up as you are and people saying they're not going to change. Like that should be standard when people date. It's saying like, I'm going to assume that I'm not going to change. I have dreams of working out, getting a better job, but what they should say is, I don't actually know if that's going to happen. But people are too shameful to talk about their limits. We are presenting ourselves to the world and to our partners as if we're here, and we're really only here. That doesn't mean we can't get here, but we're not going to get here going straight up. We get here by going over here and back down and back here and over here. Life is the windiest road. And that's how people should present themselves, meaning this may be how I'm going to be. And if you are okay with that, we should have an agreement that you love me. You love this. You love that I go into the room and I watch porn sometimes. You love that I eat my food with my mouth open. You love that I sometimes drink champagne and sometimes I don't. Like, like that's real. That's reality. And you should take time while you're dating to do that. Nobody fucking does that. They get into a relationship and these people have these undue expectations. Well, I just thought at some point, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean? So wait a second. Let me get this straight. So you're with me, waiting like some serpent in the water, to see if I'm going to change or fix myself or do what and say, what are you talking about? How long were you gonna wait? It's ridiculous. This is how most normal, I don't know, after the first couple weeks, right? 4 weeks, maybe a month, people start getting into the reality like, damn, this fool he really is not going to change. And maybe I should, try to change him. Maybe if he change, maybe if they change. So all these don't create that scenario of that freedom. What creates a scenario of that freedom is where you're not projecting what's going to happen to you onto the pursuits of your partner.
I love that.
And so you're not attaching what they do onto the reason that you love them.
Mm-hmm.
So you love them for who they are, not for what they do. There's a lot of people that they fuck around. A client falling in love with their coach. I love you for what you do. Someone falling in love for them because they work together. I love you for what you do. Those are dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
They are dependent. Their relationship and the connection are created because there's a dependency on an exterior thing to make an interior connection work. That will never last. Yeah. So that's how you kind of create the freedom scenario that you were talking about, and that's how you don't create the freedom scenario that I was talking about.
Thank you for explaining that. And I feel it'll resonate with a lot of people because I feel like even me in the past, I've been in relationships where, it wasn't based on who the person was. It was based on what they could do or what I could do for that person. And
right,
that's no way to love anyone.
Like, you should spend a day with the next person that you date watching cartoons, eating Frosted Flakes in a tank top with shorts on, just laying on, and see how long you guys can do that without somebody being like, oh, we gotta fucking, because,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying that that's what you would do, but you get what I'm saying? Like the dependencies, like this should resonate. This should carry through. People should be concerned about dependencies because everybody wants to be loved and everyone's like, well, I just don't think put yourself forward before all of the dependencies. This is who I am. This is what I am. You don't need to be an asshole about it, right?
Yeah.
But let these MFers know, these people you're dating, especially for women. You know, it's still categorically to this day, women have a kind of an easier time having more of a selection still than men. And I don't know about other communities, but what I'm basically saying is, for women, siphon through those dependencies. Like, look at those things, check those things out. If you see it, call it out. Don't even be a part of it. Now, this is the struggle. When I say dependencies, the listeners can also look at themselves, and this might be hard to digest, because I don't just mean the person that has the dependency. I mean your dependency, as even the listeners, to use as a reasonable, rational reason to hook up with somebody. You understand, we actually can't get away from dependencies. There's one dependency we can't get away from, and that's the pheromonic, biological, navigating system of attraction in each and every person. That is a dependency, but that's a natural dependency. That's nature. That's not external man-made. So, yeah. Also, one last thing with that, I've got to add this in.
Please.
As far as relationship advice, in order to navigate relationships healthily, there's one quote that you're going to want to remember is, sometimes in life, in order to keep the relationship, you have to say things that are going to break the relationship.
That's a good one. And I think that's definitely something that I can say that has changed my relationship, is just being able to have the hard conversations, or, like you said, saying the things that I normally wouldn't if I felt like it would hinder the relationship in any way.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to ask you about human designs and just kind of get into that a little bit. After we talked, when we met the first time, I went and looked up mine, and I found out I was a generator. And that feels super aligned to just like how I process things, how I work through things, and just how I try to move through life. Why would you say people should know what their human design is? And why do you think that's
This is Nimram speaking to you, and I command you to go to DevonTaylorAuthor.com right now. You must check the specials. Listen to me. You must check the specials now.
important?
It's important. Number one, I say this all the time. It's a way to ungaslight yourself. It's not a way to, show anybody up, or it's not a way to improve your life. It's not going to do any of that shit for you. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's this stuff is lifelong. You have, I think it's 5 or 6. You have 5 or 6 different systems collapse into one. I Ching, chakra system, astrology. I can't think of the other 2 or 3, but they're stacked. There's a lot of information. So my coach, I just had a session with her yesterday on Friday, and I was all excited because the person I'm working with, she's into human design too. So I'm like looking at her chart. We put our charts together. It's like finding out all this stuff. And my coach is like, hey, that's great and all, but you're learning about human design. She barely knows anything. This is fun, but you guys you can't use any of this stuff because it's advanced. You guys got to use your strategy and authority. Number 1, pure point blank, 101, strategy and authority, strategy and authority, strategy and authority. Use that and then just go from there. So yeah, it's important to ungaslight yourself, to start assimilating in the world, because it's not really what the world thinks about you. It's about what you think about you. And I'm not saying that the external world can't hurt you or doesn't have an influence. It does. But there's a first battle and a second battle. The first battle is your mind. The second battle is everything outside of your mind. And we are taught and programmed to focus on the second battle, when in fact we should be focusing on the first battle. Because the first battle will change the scope and the playing field of the second battle, undoubtedly so. They're dependent. So, yeah, it's to help you ungaslight yourself and see yourself differently, and to understand you do have a place in the world. And every single time a person, I see them uncovering their human design for the first time, every single aspect, almost every single aspect, because some of them they don't agree with. They're just like, that doesn't sound good. That sounds unsavory. So almost every single aspect, they're like, they just feel like somebody's reading their heart, just like reading it, just like, it's possible that you might feel this way. Have you ever done that? And they're like, whoa, oh, yeah. And they're like smiling and they can't speak because they're just so like, oh my God, are you reading my journal? It's like, no one's reading your journal. This is what's been going on. Like, this is how you operate. So, I mean, imagine this. This is a great scenario. It just popped in my head. Imagine you wake up in the morning and you made a piece of content. This is probably more directed for people that make content and people are coaches or whatever, but you make a piece of content, you put it out there, right? And you get a response that affects you, and you're like, that sucks, like I hate that. And what are you doing all day? You're thinking, who is this person? How do I know them? Who knows them that knows them? All this stuff. And all of it's external. All of it. And you go to sleep finally writing this like thing, maybe, or the next day, about what you're going to do. And this doesn't just have to do with people or coaches that I know. This is like the lifestyle of just somebody trying to do something online in general. Maybe some people are just trying to share their thoughts. It happens. So imagine that day with human design. What would you do? To comfort yourself, you might look up your chart. You might look up information about your gates and your channels and all this other stuff and find out, oh, like I cultivate and call in like these type of scenarios, or I can be responsible for these types of scenarios, or this type of scenario is right for me. Right? So it's no longer about like whether or not you did something right or wrong. It's not about right or wrong. It's an experience that you're having, and it's validated by this system called human design. It doesn't mean it's going to stop you from feeling bad or hurting, or maybe you don't want to live anymore. Like, I'm being dramatic, but yeah, some things can feel that way. That's a very understandable, valid, human experience. But to lighten the load a bit, that's how it can help. Like, to give another example, me waiting for an invitation, right? And being invited to answer questions and things like that. How I actually operate. So I'm programmed, I have guilt motivation, and guilt motivation doesn't mean I am motivated because I'm guilty. Guilt motivation is a word and a term that Ra used when he created human design. And he used a lot of words that were really shocking and wanted to get your attention. So what guilt motivation means is I know what needs to be fixed and I know how to fix it. And it's good for me to fix things. It's important for me to fix things and know how to fix things, physical and metaphysical. And because of that, when I'm invited and there's an opportunity for me, what happens is there is something that comes, I channel something that comes through me that can be an answer for me or the person or people that I'm around, or both. And the only access I have to that actual divine knowledge that comes through, because I say stuff that I've never said before all the time, and I have an open G and an open head, so I'm always getting influence and stuff, right? I'm not supposed to hold on to anything. And so when somebody asks me a question, it's like they have the key to the treasure box, and I can't access my gifts until I'm engaged in that way. And when I fully embodied that, it's like, well, what have I been out here doing the whole time? I've been out here giving unsolicited advice, just like telling people what to do and how to do it and all that, because it's so frustrating. Like, and I hate to say it, but like, yeah, at the time, even when I had a session with you, like, yeah, I was frustrated. Like, I wasn't like visibly frustrated, but there was some frustration because I'm just like, why don't you just, it's just one of those things. And it's like, that wasn't my place. That wasn't my thing. You didn't ask me, what should I do explicitly?
Yeah.
Like directly. You didn't give me that invitation for that. So whatever comes through is just kind of like me being in bitterness, my not self theme of my human design. Right. But when I'm engaged in that way, I might not even say that. I probably would say something different, but I can't access that until I'm engaged in that way. So I know myself through the other. That is my code. That is my light. I know myself through the other. So that's why human design is important, to ungaslight yourself and also help you operate properly in the world.
I love that. Yeah. I would have asked you if I knew. that's
right.
That was, yeah.
I didn't know that at the time either.
Oh wow, that's good to know. And even thinking back on that, like I said, the session was powerful, so it was definitely life-changing. And even after, when we spoke the other day, just the way you checked on me and just were like kind of seeing how things were going was just intuitively so natural. Like I felt really seen. So I appreciate you then, and I appreciate you now.
Yeah.
But I do want to speak a little bit about, we talked about how the mind and body work and how we can kind of sort of throw ourselves into a continuous loop. And I thought that was super, super interesting, because I felt like a lot of people go through that loop that seems never ending. And I just kind of wanted you to explain that a little bit, because I felt like it was really impactful.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're on point. I'm so glad you got your stuff in front of you, because if you invite me, boy, we're going on a ride. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I've expected, and I want people to like be prepared for this episode.
Yes.
Like you're giving gems, you're dropping them, and I know people are going to catch them if they're listening. So I'm just excited for you to share. Like,
wow. I appreciate it. You are literally the first person that has taken gems and whatever comes out my mouth and put them together. That's an honor.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah. No, you gotta have some pretty good intention to help or guide, or to be able for someone to say that. I do believe that's an honor. I don't take coaching lightly. I think I think you're in a privileged position. I think there's a responsibility to be had, so when someone, salutes me like that, and that's nothing short of an honor. So thank you. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So, the brain body connection thing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it is fascinating. And I say blah, 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 because I'm still like trying to, how do I say this? How do I explain this? Yeah. So do you think we can, let me see. Well, I know the listeners, if they listen on a podcast, they're not going to be able to see it, but I think I'll share.
On Spotify, they'll be able to see it. So anything you share. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Let's try this out.
Here we go.
Let's see here. Okay. So I made this little chart, and let's see. I can stretch this out a little bit more. I made this little chart, and what you have here is, whoop, I gotta go this way, zoom. What you have here is the observer. Okay. And before I get into this, I should probably preface, what I'm showing you guys is graphics is, it's so exciting. Actually, my inner child is like really happy right now. Like a presentation, like today in class I made, like you show like a diagram or something. All right, so basically I made this because I found out how visual visual I am, and it's important for me the way that I assimilate. I actually can take in a lot of images, and there's a lot of images in my head, and because of that, I can look at two of the same images and think two different things. There's certain people that see in color in their mind. They think in only color, they think in words, they think in sound, or they think in all three or all four or visuals, all that stuff. It's a mix. So because I think visually, taking information and putting it visually has been just like my jam. I'm so into it. Matter of fact, if you find yourself listening to this podcast or watching this podcast and you need someone to translate or transcribe your information for maybe your course or anything else visually, I'm the guy. Contact Devon, who contact me, and we will be in business. Anyways, so I figured out this is like my thing, and I got so excited, and I was listening to this woman who does human design, and my coach turned me on to her, and then I showed her what I created, and then she was like, you should send this to her. So I will later today, but this is a visual representation of what I think is possibly kind of like the mind feeling, like mind body loop, and how we create our own loop. It's a loop. So like when I said before that the mind can't, so you feel your sensations in your body before the mind, that's still real. But when it comes to something that's a pattern, not something new, something old that comes from your childhood and on all your past and stuff, this is kind of like the loop. That's different, because a loop is a paradox, right? We don't kind of know what starts the loop, and I'll show you guys here. Is it the brain or the mind, or is it the body? That's what happens in a loop. You don't really know. What I was talking about earlier was from the inception of how to know. Well, it was a disclaimer to know basically if you're paying for a real coach that really knows what they're doing, and also ungaslighting yourself from thinking that all you need to do is talk yourself out of it. So anyways, this is the observer. The observer is the person that can step outside of the trauma that you're experiencing or what you're experiencing in your body and say, not that I'm going to die. No. I feel like I'm going to die. I feel threatened. I feel scared. Not that I am scared. That's what the observer does. That's what the observer says, right? So we want to training to observe rather than identify with, right? And then it goes down to, well, over here it goes, is what this won't let go. Is what my mind experiencing right now? Is what's in my mind? Is what is in my mind? Am I experiencing that right now? No. Okay. Then I know where the experience is then. So is what is in your mind? Is that happening in real life? Okay, I know where the experience is then. It's in your mind. Am I going to have enough money this month? Is it the 30th? No. That is in your mind. It's valid only in your mind, not in this reality. And then you move over here, and it says the characteristics of conditioning, amplification, mountain out of a molehill, identification. This is me. This me. I'm sorry. This me. This is whole. I am. I messed that whole thing. Anyways, it's all a story. That's identifying with it. The characteristics of conditioning and amplification is making a mountain out of a molehill, right? So then it comes down to your mind, right? So this is your mind, and this is your mind on drugs. No, this is your mind. And then it goes, the mind has the pathways where we can think about something and scare ourselves. That's what I mean. That's the loop. So what is a pathway for me? What's a pathway for me? Becoming like my father. That's a pathway. I can scare myself into that. Devon, do you want to take a moment, if you want to or not, and tell us a pathway that you know that you have? You don't have to.
That I will raise the kids the same way I was raised.
That's a pathway, and yeah, that's good. And you know what is susceptible when you're navigating that pathway or recounting that pathway? Buying things that you don't need, doing things that you don't need. So if I don't want to be like my father, right? So for instance, like he had complications like stroke and all this other stuff, and he has had other health conditions and stuff. I can't make sense of it, like his medical history, like, to be honest, like drinking was involved, like I can't make sense of it. But is there some stuff that he went through that is genetic? It's possible. So if there's somebody selling something that prevents strokes, I might buy it. If there's a categorically, like, critically acclaimed teaching system that you can purchase for a monthly subscription to make sure that your kids don't, have the childhood that you had, you might buy it. It's like, you see what I mean? So it's like this.
Yeah.
I'm pointing this out, and I've never had this thought, but I'm pointing this out now because it's true. I want the listeners to understand. This is important to know your pathways. It's important to know this stuff because this goes into not only who you are, but how you are, how you operate, the things you spend your money on, right? So we'll move forward. The mind has pathways where we think about something, scare ourselves, right? Then comes the trigger. When the trigger happens, it creates a chemical cascade that goes into the body. Can I go? I think I can go in presenter mode. It would be a lot easier for me, actually. Presenter mode. Yep, presenter mode. Nope, never mind. So chemical cascade is in the body. Now the body has the chemical cascade in there. The body has to deal with it now. When the body's dealing with that, they're persistent illusions. So you start having visions or perceptions of what will happen because of the body's having this reaction. So you're trying to make sense of it. As you're trying to make sense of it, it makes it seem as it's real because it's a chemical, thing. That's the chemical component. Now you're having actual sensations of the body. This is where you can have a panic attack or PSTD. And then the mind is interpreted. And now the mind is, now when the sensations get bigger, now the mind is saying, oh, something really happened here. With the mind's like kicking back on. It's like, the mind is interpreting the present body sensations in a particular way, overwhelm, etc. And then the mind doesn't want to feel the sensations. So then you're like, I don't want to feel this way. I can't have a panic attack right now. Like, what's going on? So then it's like, I don't want the feeling. Then the mind creates a story that very well puts on repeat. Most of the time that's, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I shouldn't have done that, I did something wrong. So now you're trying to calm yourself down. So you start to rationalize and reason with yourself while you're having a panic attack, while PTSD, while something's going on. Then introduces the story. The story's on loop. The story is the same. No one's going to come help you. So you need to stop crying, stop being a little, whatever. Something terrible is going to happen if you keep doing this way. You're going to be dead and left alone, right? That's the reasoning logic. Believe it or not, that's a way to logic it right there. And then that pattern is layered in the brain, in the neurological pathways, creating that chemical trigger. And it goes back to the mind, because the reasoning logic is how the mind reasons with things. That's what it's kind of designed for, to reason. And then as the mind makes that logic, it's thinking about that thing again. Then there goes the trigger, then the cascade, then the body, chemical component, then the body again, having sensations. And then the mind is trying to interpret it. The mind doesn't want, your mind is like, I can't do this right now. I don't want this feeling. Then the story, and it just loops.
Just so fascinating to see it like laid out in that way, and just to have more perspective on how our mind and body are working together. What can you say, or what do you think we can do to stop that loop so that we're not creating that chemical imbalance over and over and over again?
It's hard to say because I have an uncanny ability to compartmentalize. That's a good question. I don't think there's one definitive answer. I think everybody needs their own specialized tools, and everyone should have a coach that can guide them to them finding their own tools, not giving them the tools, them discovering their own tools. I know that when you have anxiety, there's kind of like this tall tale, and I've yet to try it out because everybody gets anxiety at some point. I've never tried it, but you can bite into a lemon, apparently. It stops anxiety just like that.
Wow.
So that's a thing.
I did not know that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to know.
One thing that you could do is, if you're listening to this podcast, remember that you listen to this podcast, first of all, and remember that the word loop was said a bunch of times. And while you're in the midst of having your feeling state, or some people even call it an upgrade, while that's going on, remember you are in a loop. You're in loop. Of course you think you're a POS. How many times have you said that to yourself? That's nothing new. If that's nothing new, it's a loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a loop. I mean, how many things do we have to judge ourselves by as humans? We have a range, a spectrum of feelings and how we feel about ourselves. Doesn't really go outside of that. And most people say the highest is absolute love. Like, not happiness. Happiness is love, right? Like pure love. That's supposed to be like the highest. Well, you're either somewhere in that range, you know? If you feel something you've never expected before in that same situation, that's not a loop. That's a new situation with a new feeling associated with it. But when it comes to automatic voices in your head, your own voice telling you things about reasoning with your shit and how you're either bad, responsible, or whatever. Because you got to understand, people don't understand how sneaky and divisive your mind is. Is it really you're having a hard time? Is it really you can't figure it out? Or could it be that in order to keep up with the family structure and the self-reflection that you got growing up, you and your mind, to survive your childhood, even though you're not in your childhood home anymore with the childhood people that you grew up with, your mind still carries the characteristic that you're confused and you don't know enough and you need to do better, because that's the mechanism that worked in that dynamic, and you're still carrying that on in your life. So your mind is so powerful and so creative that it creates scenarios and situations where you are confused and you don't know enough, even though maybe you're in situations where you shouldn't know enough and you should be confused because it's not right for you, but you can't see that because you're navigating in this survival situation from your deep, long past. That's how powerful the mind is and can be. It's not a system that saves you. Your mind doesn't think anything's wrong with anything. It doesn't. It doesn't see it that way. It sends you what you need. If you used as a little one, if you used a rusty old hammer called shame, or a rusty old hammer called guilt, or a rusty old hammer called I'm not good enough, to bang that nail in, to fix whatever you thought you could fix when you were little, and that's what worked with mommy and daddy, and you're going to use that throughout your entire life, the same hammer, and you're going to use that in relationships, and it's going to go to shit. Working relationships, going to go to shit. Other relationships, going to go to shit, because you're using the same hammer to get different results, and the mind knows no different. It's just keep getting you. It's maintaining you. It's not supposed to improve you. It's maintaining you. It's all these systems are doing, you know. And then with the hammer example, that little inner child doesn't know any better. That little inner child is stuck in time. So all it does is bring the same tools to the same thing. It's all you have is awareness. That's it. You can't even make the changes. The changes comes through the feeling and experience of going through life and having different experiences. That's how the change happens, through the body, the feeling, and the mind. The mind makes sense of it somehow, but there's some things in life that the mind can't even make sense of. So that's just a trip onto itself. But yeah, that's my advice on how to interrupt the loop. Pay attention to those things that I said.
I'm going to even be vulnerable and say that was where my mind was, or where my mind goes to anytime I wouldn't even say just anytime I'm finding success, but like anytime I have a quiet moment, like my mind wants to go into the, oh, you're shit, or nobody thinks that you're, fucking great, or whatever it is saying at that time. And
yeah,
I know that for anyone that's listening, that advice you gave can help, but I know that it'll help me too. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I have a lot to say on it, obviously, but it's important. It's not really about finding your thing outside of yourself. It's really about how deep does this go, right?
Yeah.
And crying about, like, physically crying and, like, crying with your inner child. That's good too, but it goes so much more deeper. And it's important to find a coach or someone who will take you. Nah, I shouldn't even say take you. You just need someone to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
You just need presence. You need someone to be with you as you go through a void or a dark night of the soul. Because at your lowest, at your most, whatever unsightly of you, if you see a door for compassion, a door for empathy, that unfortunately will lead you to give that to yourself. That's the sad part. That's in reverse. The way we're healing ourselves is in reverse. Because if we felt that way about ourselves and had that much compassion for ourselves from the get-go, we probably would have a goddamn utopia.
Right.
But we're doing it in reverse, meaning there's so much trauma that happens every single time a child is born. Every single time. And no child is without trauma. So that's understandable. Like, there's a fair, we get it. But there's a lot more excess undue that's not necessary that happens. And because of that, in order to see the compassion that we could give ourselves and the grace and the beyond the inner child, I'm talking about present day. The inner child can get that all day long and needs that, but the present day too. In order to do that, you have to see someone else do that outside of you, to you, for you to be like, oh, well, I guess I'm not a piece of shit. That's wild. Wait, so you're saying the way you feel about yourself is dependent on the external? That's the awareness that I want everyone to understand. You can do all this training and all coaching and all this other stuff. You can even work with me. But I'm going to tell you the same thing every time. It's more important on how you feel about yourself. If you need me to tell you you're amazing, and I find that out, we're not going to work well together. Because that's never going to happen. I will only tell you that after, or feel that I should even say anything about it after you've came to that yourself, because a good coach directs their student to themselves, gives them the rod and the bait, but doesn't go fishing with them to pressure them, doesn't give them the fish, maybe visits them once a year. That's a good coach. You know what I mean? So it's really important for people to understand, like, don't get self-reliant on these things. Understand that it's okay to need that, but see the game. Like, if you need somebody to make you feel better about yourself, it's okay. Just know that. Don't rely on it, but know that, and be like, okay, so And that's what's so funny is like when people get in relationships, it goes right into relationships. It's like, well, I really like him or I really like her. Well, is it because you've been dating for a week and they just think you're amazing?
Right.
How do you know that you love this person? Maybe they just like having sex with you and, you're pleasant to be around for a week. So you guys spend every day together. It doesn't mean anything. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah.
You need deeper stuff. So, yeah.
I love you said that. I have so many more questions, but honestly, I love what we've been speaking about, and I feel like I just want to honor this, but I want to end with one more question before
Yeah.
I ask you to leave all of your socials and all of that,
Yeah.
because I think it relates a little bit to what we were already talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How can someone embrace more of their authenticity and just today's climate? Because I feel like that a lot of what you were saying is about, almost embracing yourself first before trying to look for that validation outside. But how can we do that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. That is something that really hits home for me. I'm kind of sad. Like I really don't know where to even direct people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say work with somebody like me.
Mm-hmm.
I hold no punches. I mean, I don't know where you can go to be authentic or find your authenticity, because short of saying spend 5 days off your phone, off social media, that's a start. I'm on social media. I check things out, but I'm just a different breed. And there's so much that isn't authentic that's shown as authentic. Like it's really kind of like paradoxical if you really think about it. It's very like wild. Like authenticity is what you do and how you behave in behind closed doors in the world. That's authentic. And some people take that and mean like, well, if I were to tell this motherfucker that and I would say this thing over here, blah, blah, and it's like, no, that doesn't mean that you need to do that.
Yeah.
Still be relatable, care about the other human. It's important to. We're sharing this experience together. Care. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is authenticity comes from the shedding of the dependencies.
Mm.
So in order, now there it is. See, I'm glad you asked the question because I was scared. I don't know how to fucking answer this. That's it though. That's it. Shed yourself of the dependencies. And you know what happens when you shed yourself of the dependencies? You start going through a death process. You start going through a void. You start going through an actual sensation of something dying, because it's true. Something is dying within you. It is a real death. You can't complain about that stuff anymore. You can't use that parent as the reason why you think you're effed up. You can't do it because we're going through a death process. And you're going to feel what it's like to be responsible for the way your life has turned out. You need to grieve that. You need to feel that. Because while you're living your life trying to avoid that, it's creating more harm than good. It's all a show. You're putting on a show for people. You're putting on a show for your fucking self.
Yeah.
You're putting on a show for your spouse, who you say you're the closest with. It's a show. Those things need to die. So in order to become more authentic, there is a shedding process. Actually, when you really think about it, it's kind of like being naked. We layer ourselves with things that we'd like to see, we want other people to see. This whole thing that I got going on, these glasses that have no prescription, this is for y'all. Because I think I look good in this. I'm layered up. But I know that. I don't wear this shirt. I barely wear this shirt. You know what I'm saying? I like it and all, but I don't go do my normal things in this shirt. But I'll talk about it. I have no. Who am I here to prove? What am I doing here? See, that's what happens when you fuck around. You don't have a purpose. You just out here. That's kind of what and that's kind of my strength as a coach. Like I joke around and stuff, but I don't really have a vested interest in whether or not this person gets this place or that person. I'm an experience. more so than I'm a coach. I'm a time in somebody's life. I'm closer to an event if they want to have it. So that's my best advice on how to get closer to authenticity. Find you some person or someone who's going to help you shed yourself of dependencies. Yeah.
I love that. I feel this episode was so great, and so grateful for you taking the time to drop gems and just be so open and allow us all in to just kind of hear your story, but also hear what you've been working on. And
yeah,
I appreciate you. So
yeah,
I know everyone wants to know, where can they find you? Where can they book with you? Any of your social links?
I stopped messing around with calendars and stuff. So just go ahead and reach out to me. Instagram, Among Gods. That's just like it's spelled, 2 G's in the middle. Never said that out loud. That sounds pretty. That's pretty catchliney, like 2 G's in the middle. I kind of like the ring of that.
I love that. That was actually really good.
Yeah, it was good. I kind of like it. So that, and then just Obsidian Czar on Facebook. Just reach out to me, make contact, and we will talk about your future.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you can come back again and do another episode and talk some more and just let people in. And I once again appreciate you for taking the time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2.
All righty. All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Hey guys, it's Icarus here.
And Amelia.
And I'm here to tell you if you'd like to join our brand new adventure. Go to DevonTaylorAuthor.com to learn more.
And check out the cool items like the new bucket hat.
Yeah, and so much more. See you guys there.